Good day, everyone. So I am Ms. Jane Cristal BAUTISTA-BAYAS, a research teacher from Governor Ferrer Memorial National High School, Maine. So I am here with you today to discuss about my topic under the subject Plant Physiology for my MAED Biology under Dr. Helen A. Gutierrez. So the topic that is assigned to me is all about mineral nutrition. So it is divided into two, which are the following. First, we have the macronutrients, and the second one is the micronutrients. So without further ado, let's start with our discussion proper. So plants are one of the organisms that plays a vital role in the survival of animals and human beings. So plant nutrients are one of the key factors for plants to survive and grow. So there are 16 chemical elements that are known to be important for this. So we can divide these elements under two main groups, which are the following. We have the non-mineral nutrients, and the other one is the mineral nutrients. Okay, so let's have first the non-mineral nutrients. So the non-mineral nutrients are the C, H, and O. So these are the carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So these are found in air and in water. Whereas the mineral nutrients, we have 13 mineral nutrients and we divided it into two main groups. So we have the micronutrients and the macronutrients. Okay. So let's have first the macronutrients. So when we say macro, it means in a very large amount or quantity. So macronutrients can be divided into two major groups. We have the primary and the secondary nutrients. So under the primary nutrients, the elements or the nutrients that are needed are the NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Under the secondary nutrients, so we have the calcium, magnesium, and sulfur. Okay, so for the micronutrients, so when we say micro, it means in a small amount or quantity of nutrients. So micronutrients are the elements which are essential for plant growth only in a very small quantity. So these are the following micronutrients. So B, we have boron, Cl for chlorine, Cu for copper, Fe for iron, Mn for magnesium, Mo for molybdenum, and Zn for zinc. Okay, so today I will be discussing the function of the following elements, the symptoms, and the deficiency. Okay, so later on you will identify why your plants died or what are the causes why plants tend to die. Okay, so let's have first the first element, which is the nitrogen. So all the essential nutrients, nitrogen is one of the required plant nutrient in a very large amount. So it forms the form of absorption, which is the NO3 and the NH4 or nitric oxide and the ammonium ion. So the function of nitrogen is it is important for the growth and development of vital plant tissues and cells. It also helps to hold genetic code in the plant nutrients. Another function is it gives the plant their green color. So aside from the presence in the protein and purine and pyramid lines of DNA and RNA, so the nitrogen element is responsible for giving green color for plants and also for the replication of DNA and RNA for plants. So one of the deficiency for us to identify whether our plant is lacking nitrogen or there are too much nitrogen present on our plant, so we have the following deficiency. So the first one, the chlorophyll content of plant leaves is reduced. So if your plant tend to be not that green in color, so there might be a deficiency in nitrogen. So flowering, fruiting, protein, and starch contents are reduced. So the lesser presence of flowers or bearing of fruits and also the presence of protein and starch in a very small quantity only. So the symptoms to identify are as follows. So first, dark green leaves and foliage. Second one, leaf tips may turn down. Third is yellowing on the affected leaves. And the fourth one is claw leaves will eventually start turning yellow, getting spots and dying. So as you can see on the image, so if there would be the presence or if the nitrogen is present in plants, so there is a possibility that the plant will have a green color and same as it bears flowers and fruits. So kapag naman it has lesser amount of nitrogen, it tends to become yellowish in color. Okay? So the next, okay, another picture. So you have here no presence of nitrogen and with presence of nitrogen. So as you can see based on the images that are being shown, so there is a greater effect if there will be no presence of nitrogen in plants. So it might not grow that tall compared to the other one which has no nitrogen in it. Okay, so another element, so we have phosphorus. So phosphorus is a chemical element that symbolizes IP atomic number 15. So phosphorus, there are two major forms. So we have the white phosphorus and the red phosphorus in plants. So what is the function of this one? So it is highly reactive and it near found as free element on Earth. So when we say phosphorus, one of its function is to increase the flower formation and seed production. So this is the one responsible for this kind of activity in plants. And also, it increases stalk and stem strength. So it makes the plants rigid or strong. Okay, another function, it increases flower formation and seed production and also increase resistance to plant diseases. Okay. So what are the another function we have to stimulate root development and increase nitrogen fixing capacity of legumes. So one of the main functions of phosphorus is to provide strength for plant growth, particularly in the development of roots. So the deficiency are as follows. So we have plants are stunted and older leaves often dull green in color. Stems and leaf stalks may turn purple. Plant maturity is often delayed. Plant will be dwarfed or stunted. So if you are to observe your plant, so commonly plants grow depending on the availability of the nutrients present in it. So if you are to observe your plants which doesn't grow normally on its original size or ordinary size, so there might be a deficiency for this element. So for the symptoms to observe, so very rare and usually buffered by pH limitation. So somewhat our plant might be acidic or basic. So excess phosphorus can interfere with the availability of copper and zinc. So if you are to observe your plants, so I have here an image for this one. So same with the other element mentioned a while ago. See, if you can notice, the plant which has no potassium in it tend to be small compared to the plant which has phosphorus in it. So it is much taller compared to the other one. Okay. So next element is potassium. So commonly considered as the quality nutrient. So plant absorbs potassium in ionic form or highly mobile. So when we say highly mobile, the nutrients or the molecules of the potassium are freely moving on the plant. So the function of this one is to control the opening and closing of the stomata, and also it is important in the biochemical reaction in plants. So another function is it activates enzymes and responsible for specific function, facilitates protein and starch synthesis in plants, and also it plays a vital role in the osmoregulation of water and other salts in plant tissues and cells. So the main function of this element is to control the activity that is happening within the plant, most especially when it comes to the development of tissues and cell of the plants. Okay, so the deficiency. Chlorosis may cause yellowing of leaves, lead to shredding and defoliation of the leaves. So if there is too much chlorine present to this one, so there is a possibility that the plant will turn into yellow. Stunted growth lead to slow growth or poor development of roots and stems. So say with the another deficiency mentioned a while ago. Okay, So the symptoms to be observed when there is lacking of nutrients, specifically that element, is the leaf tip and marginal necrosis. So when we say marginal necrosis, it is the improper irrigation or poor soil and low humidity. So if you are to observe the appearance of the plants, so somewhat the tip is turning into yellow. And also, when we measure the height of the plant, so it is somewhat stunted or smaller compared to its original size. So potassium deficiency symptoms on a tomato leaf is given here. And a potassium deficient maize plant, necrosis of the leaf margin is most severe on the oldest leaves. So if you can notice on the leaf here, the margins of the leaf, so you can see that it turns into somewhat black yellowish compared to its original color, which is green. Okay, another element, we have the calcium. So the form of absorption is through the presence of calcium ion. Okay, so the function of calcium is to stimulate ammonium absorption and also in the form of calcium pectate responsible for holding together the cell walls of plants. So when we say calcium pectate, it means to combine with pectin or the glue or the fiber that is present in fruits and plants that holds plant cells together. And the calcium form pectate is in the form of salt that helps keep the cell walls sturdy and rigid. So it makes the plant rigid or strong. Okay, so another function is important in guard cell physiology, especially in stomata closure. So calcium is one of the main elements that is responsible for the closing and opening of the stomata. So stomata is already discussed with us with Ma'am Connie last time. So it is one of the major important plant part for the plant growth. So number 4 is used activating certain enzymes and to send signals that coordinate certain cellular activity. So it is also responsible for the activities that is happening within the plant. Okay, so for the deficiency, so young leaves and fruit displays calcium deficiency first. And yellow-brown spots surrounded by a sharp brown-out lineage. Okay, so if you are to notice, the plant lacking with this kind of element, so the symptoms to observe are as follows. So high level of calcium can compete with magnesium and potassium. Uptake causing their deficiency. If there are too much of this one, so that it might affect the function of other mineral nutrients present in a plant. So yellowing of the tip and edges of the leaves are observed. Okay, so if you are to look for the example, so as you can see, the edges or the tip of the leaves of the plants turns yellow-brown in color. Okay, so I mean to say, it's either it is lacking of calcium or there are too much calcium present in it. So, okay, another element or nutrient needed by plant is the magnesium. So, the form of absorption is through magnesium ion and it is also high mobility. So, magnesium ion and high mobility, it means fast movement of molecules inside the plant. Okay, so for the function, so it is responsible for the chlorophyll formation in plants. So, the formation or the production of green color of plants. So, synthesis of amino acids and cell proteins. Another function is that resistance to unfavorable factors and vitamin A and C concentration. So, another function is that the main function of this is to regulate the activity and presence of different vitamins present in plants. Okay, most especially in the formation of the green pigments. So the deficiency for this one is yellowing between leaf veins, sometimes with reddish-brown tints, and early leaf fall. So it is not that sturdy compared to other plants. So the symptoms to observe are the following. Magnesium toxicity are rare and not generally exhibited visibly. So unlike other symptoms of other elements, this type of symptom for magnesium is not that observable. Okay, so we cannot exactly determine whether the plant or the leaf has a small amount or a greater amount of magnesium in it. So for color verification, so if it is somewhat yellowish in color, so most likely it has low magnesium content. And then for the perfect color green, this one, the other picture, so it shows adequate amount of magnesium in it. Okay, to continue, another element is sulfur. So essential for the growth and development of all crops. And it absorbs through the roots in the form of sulfate and immobile nutrients. So meaning to say, the molecules present in plants is not moving freely within the plant. Okay, so the function is the formation of chlorophyll also, same with calcium, and production of protein. So plant proteins plays various enzymatic, structural, and functional roles, which are the following. So we have for the photosynthesis, biosynthesis, transport, immunity, and others. So they also act as storage medium to meet the growth and nutritional demands of developing seedlings. So it focuses on the development of seeds. Okay. Another function is for the synthesis of oils in oil seeds. So it is responsible also for the production of oils and activation of enzymes. So it serves as a catalyst also. So for the deficiency to observe, so yellowing of the entire leaf, including veins, usually it starts with the younger leaves, and also leaf tips may be yellow and curl downward. So the symptoms to observe, leaf size will be reduced, overall growth will be stunted, leaves yellowing or scorch on edges. So if you are to observe the plant, so without the presence of sulfur, somewhat the leaf is crumbled or it face downward. Whereas for the plant which has adequate amount of sulfur, if you are to compare the two pictures on the right, so the picture on the left shows adequate amount of sulfur, whereas the other one on the right shows insufficient amount of sulfur because it tends to be color yellow instead of green. Okay, so moving on is the boron. So it is responsible for cell wall formation and stability, maintenance of structural and functional integrity of biological membranes, and also it is responsible for the movement of sugar or energy into growing parts of plants and for pollination purposes. Okay. So if we are to focus on the formation of cell wall, one of the main important nutrient that must be present in plant is boron. Okay, so for the deficiency to observe, so limited budding, bud break, distorted shoot growth, short internodes, increased branching. So for the symptoms to observe, we have chloritic leaf tips, leaf necrosis, leaf falling, and uneven plant death. So if we have to observe whether our plants has inadequate amount of boron, so it tends to have leaf necrosis or having yellow to brown color on the leaf part, but specifically on the tip and margins of the leaves. So it also causes uneven death for plants if we are not to observe this deficiency. Okay, so another, we have the chlorine. So chlorine is needed in small quantities and aids in plant metabolism, photosynthesis, and osmosis and ionic balance within the cell. So the function of this one is to participate in several physiological metabolism processes such as follows plant growth and development, osmotic and stomata regulation, evolution of oxygen in photosynthesis. So when we say osmotic pressure, it means it is responsible for closing and opening of the stomata, and also it allows plants to regulate the amount of water and solutes within them or inside the plant itself. So in order for the plants to produce energy and maintain cellular function, so their cells undergo the highly intricate process of photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is the production of food for the plants. Okay? So critical in this process is the stomata part, wherein the photosynthesis starts. Okay? So another function of chlorine is for diseases resistance and tolerance, and also important in the opening and closing of the stomata, as what I've mentioned a while ago. And lastly, for chloride function in cation balance and transport within the plants. Okay, so the deficiency to observe. Chlorine deficiency can occur if there is consistently less than 2 parts per million chloride in the growing medium. So if there will be less amount of chlorines, there will be a possible effect on the growth of the plant. So chlorotic process with necrotic spots located between the veins or the margin of the younger leaves. So if we are to look for the symptoms, so another deficiency is, in advanced cases, chloride deficiency could cause plant wilting. So when we say plant wilting, when a plant is wilting, it is typically due to underwatering, if there will be too much water present in it, overwatering, or too much direct sunlight. So if your plant is wilting, try giving it some water and see if it perks up. Most plants will begin to wilt when they need water. So if the plant tends to face downward, meaning to say it's either it is lacking of water, too much water, or too much sunlight present in it. So the symptoms to observe are the following. So chloride toxicity starts as premature yellowing of leaves, then in the marginal leaf or tip necrosis of older leaves. So too much chlorine would cause to have chloride toxicity. Okay. So as you can see on the image, the yellowish or the inner part of the leaves tends to become yellow. Okay, so another element, we have copper. So copper is essential to plant growth. Among other things, it plays a part in several enzyme productions and is key to the formation of chlorophyll. So normal range of the growing medium is from 0.05 to 0.5 parts per million. So although copper deficiencies or toxicities rarely occur in plants, so it is best to avoid either extreme, as both can have negative impact on crops. So if there will be too much amount of copper in plants, so it could possibly cause a damage to our plants. So the function of this is to activate some enzymes in plants which are involved in lignin synthesis and is essential in several enzyme activities. Okay, so required in the process of photosynthesis as well. Respiration, it assists in plant metabolism of carbohydrates and proteins. Okay, so more of the activity inside the plant. So for the deficiency, so another function before we proceed with the deficiency is it serves also as flavor and color in vegetable and flower. Okay? So it is responsible for giving us different taste for plants and for vegetables and flowers. Okay? So deficiency. So deficiency symptoms occur in newer plants. So symptoms start as sclerosis of either whole leaf or between the veins or newer leaves. So the yellowing of the leaves is the chlorosis. So apical meristem may become necrotic and die. So when we say apical meristem, okay, so apical meristem of cells capable of division and growth in the roots and shoot tips in plants. So apical meristem gives rise to the primary plant body and are responsible for the extension of roots and shoots. So if the plant tends to become stunted, meaning to say it's either there is lacking of element for plants or too much presence of this element in plants. Okay, so the leaves become small and leaves become small in size, and also with the chlorotic areas of the leaf, so possible there will be yellowing of the tip of the leaves. Okay, so the symptoms to observe. So excess copper can restrict root growth by burning the root tips, compete with plant uptake of and sometimes molybdenum and zinc, and it also reduces branching and eventually, possibly, the plant will die. So if you are to observe the picture, so there are some parts of the leaf that turns yellowish in color. Okay. So it also affects the amount of other elements present in plants. Okay, so another nutrient, we have the iron. So it is very important to the health and growth of plants. It forms of absorption ferrous and ferricons. Okay, so iron is needed in the greatest quantity and its availability is dependent on the pH level of the growing medium. So it is also immobile, meaning to say it is not freely moving inside the cell. Okay, so essential for chlorophyll formation, one of the function, and another one is component of cytochromes. So when we say cytochromes, these are redox active proteins, considered as proteins containing a heme with a central iron atom at its core as a cofactor. So they are involved in electron transport chain and redox catalysis. So they are classified according to the type of hemes and its mode of binding. So when we say heme, it is an iron-containing compound. So it serves as one of the catalysts for the formation or for the transport of nutrients inside the plant. Okay, moving forward is another function, essential for chlorophyll formation also, and it assists in nitrate and sulfate reduction and energy production within the plant. So if there will be too much nitrogen and sulfur present in plants, so these elements will serve as a balancer for the presence of nitrogen and sulfur for plants. Okay, so the deficiency expressed as and intervenial chlorosis of new leaves. Fetchlosis develops with soil pH is high. Okay, so if the plant is too much basic, so there will be a problem to occur within the plant itself. So the symptom to observe occurs due to a low growing medium or from an excessive application of iron. So if you are to put too much iron in plants, so Fe deficiency symptoms, so the younger leaves tends to become yellowish in color. So without iron, so it will tend to become somewhat greener compared to the other two leaves here that has iron deficiency. Okay, so if too much yellowing of the plant occurs, meaning to say it has too much iron present in it. And then if it is somewhat dark green in color, meaning to say it also doesn't have iron deficiency. Okay, so another is we have the manganese. So Mn is required by plants in the second greatest quantity compared to iron. So it absorbs through the roots in the form of magnesium ion rather. So immobile nutrient, so it is not freely moving within the cell. So the function is required for chlorophyll synthesis, so formation or production of chlorophyll, required for oxygen evolution during the photosynthesis, the entrance and exit of oxygen. Another function is activate some enzyme systems and contributor to various biological systems including photosynthesis, respiration, and nitrogen assimilation. So it is also responsible for some of the activities inside the cell. Another function, it is involved in pollen germination, pollen tube growth, and root cell elongation, and resistant to root pathogenesis. So it is responsible for the occurrence of pathogens in the root part of the plant. Okay, so the deficiency, similar to iron chlorosis, yellowing of the leaf, intervenial chlorosis on younger or older leaves followed by lesion leaf shading, so restricted growth and failure to mature. Okay, so sunken spots that appear in the chlorotic areas between the veins. So Mn deficiency can occur when the pH of the growing medium exceeds 6.5. Okay, so sunken are parts of the plants that are submerged in water. So commonly, itong mga spots, they appear in the part where it is submerged in water. So the symptoms to observe, toxicity can occur if the fertilizer application rate is excessive. So too much fertilizer is also delicate to plants. So they can occur when the pH level of the growing media is below 5.5. So meaning to say it is somewhat acidic in nature. Okay, those the symptoms, burning of the tips of the margin of the older leaves as reddish brown, spots across older leaves, and forming patches on the older leaves. So if you are to observe your plants, so if there will be deficiency in plants, so it is somewhat changing in color, particularly on the tip and the margin of the plants. Okay, another element, we have the molybdenum. So it is needed in the smallest quantities by plants. So the normal range of this element is from 0.3 to 1.5 parts per million. So toxicity or deficiency is not common in plants. So it functions component into enzymes that convert nitrate into nitrite and then into ammonia before it is used to synthesize amino acid within the plants. Needed to symbiotic nitrogen-fixing bacteria in legumes and to fix atmospheric nitrogen. So it is also responsible for the activity within the cell of the plant. Okay, so the deficiency can easily resemble nitrogen deficiency. So it is somewhat similar with the nitrogen deficiency. So mobile within the plant, so the deficiency symptoms show up on older and middle leaves. So it is freely moving. So we can easily observe if there will be deficiency for this. Show up as thin chlorotic leaf margins around the leaf perimeter, and then the margin becomes necrotic or yellowish in color. So the whole leaf turns pale. So if you are to observe, so it starts with the marginal part of the leaf and then the tip of the leaves also. If you are to observe without the presence or the deficiency of molybdenum, so the tip of the leaves become necrotic or yellowish in color. Okay, and lastly, for this one, element zinc. So it is formed within the absorption of zinc oxide or zinc ion rather. So the function of zinc is to help plant produce chlorophyll important for photosynthesis, and it also a constituent of certain enzymes. So it is also responsible for the activities inside the cell. So the deficiency, growth suppression, reduced internal length, roasting, intervenial chlorosis on young leaves, or somewhat the inner veins tends to become yellowish in color. So the symptoms to observe is it occurs at low pH, so it's somewhat acidic in nature, and also it reduces the growth of the plant itself and possibly lead to leaf necrosis. So the image shows the deficiency of corn plant. So pale green plants, white to pale yellow bands in the lower half of the leaf, which advance to pale brown or gray necrosis. Okay, so if you are to observe the image here, so it somewhat become yellowish to brown. So we can easily identify whether it is lacking of nutrients. Okay, so that's all for my topic. I hope you understand and identify the different macro and micronutrients needed by plants to grow. So thank you very much for listening.